Ahoy there, fancy pants, and welcome to the Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle. With the Return to Monkey Island announcement, all the buzz is about the first two Monkey Island games and how this new one is meant to be a follow-up to those two. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the exact opposite and count down our top 10 favourite things from the third, fourth, and fifth Monkey Island games.
Okay, so this was my idea to kind of show some appreciation for the, I'm going to label the non-Ron games. So, The Curse of Monkey Island, Escape from Monkey Island, Tales of Monkey Island. So what we've compiled each is a top 10 list of things that we really like from those games. And I think we'll kind of start, one of us will just take it in turns. We'll say, number 10, this is blah, blah, blah. And we'll just go through and it will be an interesting thing to discuss. Are you with me?
Yes, let's talk about our top 10 aspects of Continuation Monkey, as I call it.
Continuation Monkey. I like a non-Ron. Okay, let's go.
That's our cursed cutlass of Cthulhu LeCheck doll. Press the button for its special transforming glow.
Okay, I had number 10. Bit of an honourable mention because I'm not in love with this game. The puzzle where Guybrush is strapped to the chair in the first part of Tales of Monkey Island.
Yeah. So you're trying to escape from Maki DeSange's lab before he can cut off your hand.
Yes, because your hand's infected at that point. Is your hand infected at that point?
Yes, yeah. You got Pox of LeCheck in your hand, and he wants to study it.
Yeah, he wants to cut it off. And he's Maki DeSange is kind of a character that I don't think's realised as well as he could be. He's a bit too on the goofy side. But I like this nice little puzzle. You're kind of trapped. It's reminiscent of the bit in LeChuck's Revenge where Wally and Guybrush are kind of hanging over the pit, except there's no time limit. And you're just stuck into one spot, you're kind of moving around. You eventually have to release a monkey from a cage and get it to help you get out of the chair.
Yeah, and these puzzles, I think, are good elements to break up these games because in these moments, you're not thinking, I could go anywhere and do anything and
exactly.
Who knows what the next step is. You think, okay, I'm clearly stuck in this one situation and it's only the resources that I currently have are going to let me get out of this puzzle.
So you're not worried about your inventory items, finding something else to use. It's just everything in that moment. And I think that's kind of a good little pause in that part. I think it's kind of just it's a nice, well-realised little puzzle that I think stands out to me broadly in that game. That's the only mention of Tales I have in this list, just as a spoiler.
Yeah. I only have one as well, and I was going to say I've just been rewatching playthrough of Tales of Monkey Island Part 1, and there are an awful lot of puzzles that involve following maps in that first part, and that sequence in DeSange's chair is, a nice break from various map-based puzzles that are throughout that part, and are used again in later parts as well.
The map thing always feels like, you got to have maps, an overhead map in Monkey Island, and so let's just have heaps of them.
Yeah.
They did a similar thing in Escape, I suppose.
I think there's a lot of influence there. Let me talk about my only item from Tales, which is something that's been spoken about elsewhere online before. It's the use of Murray in Part 3 of Tales of Monkey Island. Guybrush and his friends end up inside a giant manatee where the crew of Coronado de Cava are, and they have the big sponge that they need to suck up all the voodoo magic from LeChuck that's spreading all over the ocean. And there are, I think, 4 members of the crew, and one of them will only vote in their council decisions based on what his friend Santino says. But unfortunately, Santino is dead, and no one seems to notice or recognize or accept the fact that Santino's a skeleton. But conveniently enough, you find, as everyone I think predicted going into the episode, Murray in a treasure chest in the bottom of the manatee's guts. And you take Murray out of the chest and swap Santino's head with Murray's, and because Murray is, of course, undead and animate, everyone accepts that Murray is Santino, and it's implied that Santino is Hispanic in some capacity, and Murray starts speaking in a slightly Hispanic way after he's put on top of Santino's body, as if he sort of adopted the character of Santino. But even though Murray's been stuck on this skeleton, he still can't move or anything like that. He's still just the head. But the crew, DeCarver's crew, all accept him again as Santino, as if he's the same guy the whole way through. Like, they never accepted that he was dead. Now they don't accept that he's alive and has a different voice or anything like that. So there's a very amusing, absurdist element to that.
I remember when Tails was announced and everyone was kind of wondering, well, when's Murray coming back? I think it might have been confirmed that he's coming back. And then that's kind of a cute little story way to have him actually involved, as opposed to the cameo of him in Escape from Monkey Island. He's like a bouncer in that, and you do have to get past him, but it's just for the sake of having him in there.
Yeah. They actually incorporate him in some capacity into the story
That's nice
in Tales. Better use of him than in Escape.
You know, you look great with a melting candle on your forehead. I get the feeling you're not taking me very seriously.
Okay, so we'll move on to my number 9. I have the bumper car scene at the beginning of The Curse of Monkey Island. Just the opening cut scene.
Thinking of this one, yeah.
So there's no resolution to what happened at the end of Monkey Island 2 when we jump into Monkey Island 3 5 years later, and I always really like that. There's a nice little monologue. It's the Diary of Guybrush Threepwood, and there's the jokes about him. I said, I wish I'd have the chicken, the big mug of grog for all the good it'll do me, and then those things float past. I always thought that was very funny. I was 10 when that game came out. That's kind of the perfect sense of humour for me. And I thought, like, the idea of him just having somehow escaped LeChuck's Carnival, later renamed the Carnival of the Damned in Monkey Island 3, it was just a kind of cute way to point at that being resolved. Like, oh yeah, he escaped. There's probably some big explosion, some ridiculous thing. And he managed
definitely
to lift the curse. I think he mentions the curse in that cutscene. It left me thinking.
It's in the manual. It's mentioned in the manual. Yes. Yeah. I think that was a really good way of referring to the idea that the previous game ended in a carnival, just have him inexplicably floating in a bumper car in the middle of the ocean. I think it would have been even more effective if there'd been no further mention of the carnival in the whole game, as I mentioned in the first episode. I think that would have... But I think it's a really just funny and image that kind of captures the series really effectively. This pirate floating in a carnival bumper car in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah,
it kind of sums up the whole thing, and the fact that he's only got these balloons in his pocket when you get onto LeChuck's ship later. And there's this sort of implication almost that Guybrush just was goofing around in the amusement park. You know, it's not really clear what happened or how he ended up there.
Well, that was kind of a perfect way, I think, to explain it away, but also not really explain it. And also, it doesn't matter at that point. It's a new game. It has to move on and do something else.
Yeah. And if you've played the second one, you can go, haha, yeah, okay, this is a reference to the ending of the second. If you haven't played it, you just go, sure, whatever, and just laugh at it. And,
Here's a really nerdy reference to that. Do you remember there was a click and play fan game called Monkey Island 2.5? Someone had developed.
I do remember that.
Someone had made it, and it was like this really short thing. It was like 5 or 6 frames, and you ended up losing your coat, getting the balloons, and like getting in a bumper car and getting fired out into the ocean.
And the we'll probably go into this in more detail in a separate one, but one of the endings of Chris Yusko's MI2 fan game also is a complete lead into the opening of Curse of Monkey Island, but we'd better talk about that separately in a completely different episode.
We should try to get Yusko in for an interview. Anyway, you go into your number 9.
All right, my number 9. I've just gone in reverse order of which I basically thought of these elements, and in reverse order of the games as they came out. Mists a Time Marsh from Escape from Monkey Island. So you've got.
Well, before we go, that was my number 8. That was the next one for me.
Yeah, all right. I figured this was probably going to be one of yours as well. It's one of the things that people always say, I think, is one of the best parts of Escape from Monkey Island, this puzzle where you go on a raft, punting through a swamp, your future self approaches you. I think you use a special clock to navigate through
do.
the marsh. I believe the hands of the clock indicate the direction to go. Your future, Guybrush's future self appears and gives you all these interesting items, a gun and all this sort of stuff. But of course, the solution to the puzzle is when you reach that point where you're the future Guybrush and you meet your past self, you just have to do exactly what the other Guybrush did, say the same things and give the same items in the same order. You don't get to use any of this stuff.
No, and Guybrush says, "Cool, a gun! Watch out, Peg Nose." That's a great kind of Monkey Island gag, similar to having all the cash at the beginning of LeChuck's Revenge.
Yeah,
It's just this stuff. It's like, oh, great, all this inventory, and then it's gone.
And the only thing you can do with the gun is use it to shoot yourself, which creates a time paradox that sends you back to the beginning of the puzzle.
That time paradox is really good. Yeah, it's interesting looking back at these, and that was definitely... I kind of thought, what are the most memorable things from these games, if I just kind of off the top of my head, and that was definitely one of the scenes, and I remember playing that. I remember sitting in the room and thinking that was really cool at the time.
I thought it's also worth pointing out, as we know, Escape from Monkey Island was developed by the same people who made Sam and Max Hit the Road a few years earlier.
Yeah,
and I feel like that time paradox puzzle is... You could very easily see that in a Sam and Max game.
Definitely. I think talking about the other LucasArts adventures would be a good podcast for another time, but I think Sam and Max to me is one of the hardest of the LucasArts adventures in that classic run. But you can see that kind of weirdness getting into that game. There is a scene with kind of a time getting sucked in Sam and Max Hit the Road.
Yeah.
In one of the sections. Okay, that was my number 8. And that was my first reference to Escape.
You're a bloodthirsty monster who's already kidnapped me once, tortured my friends, and taken from me the only man I ever loved. Guybrush Threepwood.
So my number 7 was also an Escape reference, and it was Nuttin' at All.
Okay, well, that's my number 7 as well.
Okay, interesting. That's pretty funny. And I think the thing with Nuttin' at All is it's full of atmosphere. That was kind of one of the most atmospheric sections of the game for me. You've got the creepy school where people are being unpiratified.
Yeah, they're being deprogrammed, as it were, or they're being brainwashed into being respectable members of society. And
you have I forget the character's name now, that's firing the cannon if he sees more than 2 pirates.
I've actually got... That's a separate item on my list, so maybe we'll save that for...
All right. Well, you have the beach...
after this.
Yeah, you have the puzzle with the Guybrush and LeChuck dolls. I just think that beach, and you talk to Hellbeard, it's kind of implied that there's this vicious pirate who's kind of insane and running this puppet show.
Where the puppets are inexplicably Guybrush and LeChuck, and but he doesn't talk about them that way, and it's never explained why these puppets are of Guybrush and LeChuck. I don't think.
No, it's not, and it's just it's the music and like the mist and the sound effects. It's just kind of, it's just a really atmospheric, nice part of Escape.
Yeah, this sort of storm-racked island with this very gloomy, depressing atmosphere and these very eccentric characters on it, perhaps even more eccentric than you get in the rest of the game. Yeah,
and especially it's in contrast to the rest of that part. What's the other island called?
Jambalaya Island, yeah.
Where you're it's all glitzy and glamour, and it's like Starbucks and Planet Hollywood and Planet 3.
The diving competition, Stan's timeshare and all this stuff,
Yes. Diving competition is definitely not one of my highlights.
No. But I might use this to... so that was my number 7, so I'll actually add in my number 8, which was Admiral Kasaba and Simpkins.
Yes, Kasaba.
This is a very Python-esque character. You have this British... He seems to be... He's a sort of British accented naval officer with a very high opinion of himself, very evocative of kind of Graham Chapman's army major from Monty Python, and you've got he's very he's grandstanding and giving these dramatic pronouncements, and you have this unruly subordinate that you can only hear, who is Simpkins, who is the gunner who operates the really big cannon, which is that's a very British joke,
wheel out
I
the
feel.
really big cannon.
He tells them to wheel out the really big cannon, and he says, "Oh, do we have to?" And the side of the ship slides open, and this ludicrously enormous cannon comes out. I think that's one of the funniest moments in that part of the game, and it feels very much like this. It feels very much like these are kind of larger than life, almost Sam and Max-esque characters, but I feel like that he's one of those characters who probably feels like he would fit well in the Curse of Monkey Island world as well.
Yeah.
I think this kind of
reminds me of Palado from the beach. He's got the same hat.
Yeah. Well, he's that sort of that archetype of a character from the pirate era
fiction.
or from pirate movies and that kind of thing, but done in a Monkey Island sort of way.
Yeah.
In contrast to how characters like that were handled in some of those later games, especially Escape and Tales, where they could feel out of place, whereas I think Curse and some bits of Escape were good at taking a figure that you might see in an old pirate movie or in a illustration or something and turning them into character, like, as you say, Palado, for example, is a similar kind of figure.
Arr, I be Hellbeard, the unrepentant, the scourge of the seven seas.
So that leads to number 6 for me, which I had the Carnival of the Damned when Guybrush is cursed into being a little boy.
This is my number 4, so
it's interesting how they're both syncing up like that, these lists.
Bit more overlap there, yeah.
So there's this big long dialogue sequence between Guybrush and LeChuck, which is kind of one of the main letdowns of the game. I think it's kind of considered one of the worst. So the Guybrush and LeChuck have this big long dialogue sequence, and it concludes with you making LeChuck fed up, and he curses you to be a little boy. And then you don't know where Guybrush is, and you open the door of this cable car, and Guybrush walks out, and he's a little boy with this kind of comical big head. I think it's quite funny.
Yeah.
And he does this funny walk, and he says, I must rescue Elaine, but how am I going to rescue Elaine when I'm just a little boy? And he complains about his head being fuzzy, like he can't concentrate like he's a little boy, which doesn't really play into the rest of the scene. But it's a very kind of late part of the game, which is similar to other parts where all of your inventory and stuff kind of doesn't really matter anymore, and you're just figuring out puzzles in this one scene. And I always thought that was kind of a nice little section. I can't really describe why, I just like it. I think it's got some nice little contained puzzles. Murray's there, and he gets upset that you choose a toy anchor over choosing him, even though I feel like what you'd want to do, especially as a little boy, as I was a little boy playing the game, is I would want to have picked Murray as the prize. The game doesn't let you do that. You have to knock out a clown by putting an anchor, covering it with cream, and you have to order a snow cone. The characters are funny. There's a Dingy Dog, which kind of comes out of nowhere in that game, but is a very memorable character. The snow cone guy is disgusting. All you've got to do, it's kind of the finale of the game if you don't consider the next bit, which is kind of the very rushed ending on the roller coaster.
I think that whole premise, I talked about this again in the previous episode, even though I don't like it as a resolution to what happened in Monkey Island 2, I do think the idea of LeChuck building this deranged amusement park has its own merit. And I like that image of, you just start the part in this you start in this cable car covered in barbed wire and dynamite with this huge track going up to this Matterhorn-esque roller coaster in the distance. You can see the little shacks and stuff that are built around there. You go into the sideshow alley where there's Yeah, the wharf rat with the little cannon to shoot the mime. You've got Dingy Dog with the guess your age and weight. You've got these old carnival attractions, and there's this ominous thing of Guybrush going, oh, I want to go on the roller coaster, and Dingy Dog says, oh, only big kids are allowed to go on the roller coaster. And of course, the roller coaster kills you and turns you into an undead slave of LeChuck.
That's a great creepy thing. I'm not sure it belongs kind of in the whole Monkey Island universe, but it is a really nice idea.
No, I think it works in that game. I think it's a little bit, as I said last time, it's a little bit too literal in terms of how it runs with things from the first two games. But I think in isolation, it's a nice kind of grotesque
It is,
element of that game, which has that both funny, it's a dark but comedic sequence.
Yeah, it's kind of stacked full of atmosphere, and those are the best bits of that game, I think. And the game kind of has it the whole way through.
I will take your bones, still alive and in great pain, and make them into a chair. I will call it my screaming chair. Every morning I will sit in it and listen to you scream. Any questions?
Yeah, my number 6 is another one from Escape. This is LeChuck revealing himself to Elaine and Guybrush when, in the form of Charles L. Charles, he comes into the governor's mansion boasting about how he's going to win the election, and he says, and I think Elaine says the pirates will see right through you, and he says the pirates of Melee couldn't see through a window. They can't even see what's right in front of them.
Right in front of them,
They go, what are you talking about? And he goes, why, only the biggest lie of them all. And he turns into his various forms throughout the games. I like that sequence. I mean, it's silly, but I just always thought that was a funny bit. I mean, it's so nice obvious. Moment. It's so obvious that Charles is LeChuck. The whole thing of them giving him the ability to transform between the different guises he'd taken on in the previous games is a weird sort of nod. He seems to by default occupy the demon form from Curse of Monkey Island, but
it's the coolest looking form, I think.
Yeah, he uses the ghost form from Secret of Monkey Island to possess the giant statue at the end. I don't know what the benefit of turning into the zombie form would be. It doesn't happen very much.
I think they kind of had the three forms. They couldn't think of a fourth one, so now they decided he could just go to all of them.
And then they just had him in a human disguise as well, which had already been done in Secret and got done again in Tales. But yeah, I like that cutscene.
Yeah, I think that's a nice cutscene. It's a nice little performance from Earl Bowen there. Earl Bowen, we've yet to hear whether he's confirmed a return in Tales. Return to Monkey Island. But we're all hoping, I'm sure.
Ah! My arm's stuck! My circulation is cut off! You're going to have to cut off my hand!
Okay, number 5. I have another Escape one, believe it or not, and that's the Church of LeChuck.
I don't have this on my list, but I did think of it.
Actually, the Church of LeChuck is just so creepy for some reason.
It's a bit like the carnival.
Yeah, similar to the carnival, just walking in there, it's all the lava, it's this weird church where it's not really explained what goes on there, but it's something about worshipping LeChuck, and there's the creepy ghost priest in there that's actually quite friendly and helpful.
Yeah, Father Rasputin.
Yeah, rather Rasputin. And then there's a log flume in the lava.
Yeah, through the lava. Yeah, for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure if other people actually like that, and it's a bit silly. But there's something creepy about a church where people would kind of worship this demon.
Yeah, and I think Guybrush is depicted as being like the devil and LeChuck's like God kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like this stuff's funny. It's a shame that it has to occur on Monkey Island.
Yeah,
it's like
it
that.
all gets
Similar
a little
with
bit
the
too
carnival.
Self-referential. Yeah.
Yeah. The carnival doesn't need to be on Monkey Island. Imagine if that was just set on a different island, or it didn't even mention where it was set. And imagine if like this church wasn't on Monkey Island, it was buried in the jungle on Jambalaya or something. It's just a creepy little moment, and I always stuck with me that I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it's another funny kind of part of this thing that, again, I don't necessarily agree with in principle, but this sort of absurd inflation of LeChuck's role as a villain, which kind of begins in Curse and just grows and grows over the course of these games.
He becomes this ridiculous, overblown super villain.
Yeah.
As opposed to how he's depicted in the original games. But I guess if we're just talking about kind of the non-runs or the what are you calling it?
I call it continuation monkey.
Continuation monkey. Yeah, if we're just talking in that respect, then it's cool. If this was the first Monkey Island game you played and you found out, I think that'd be pretty cool. Nice and creepy.
Oh, I am so good!
My number 5 is... I guess what I'm going to say, I'm going to expand this slightly, and I'm going to say the music in Curse of Monkey Island.
Good call.
As a general thing. I think there are some really good tracks, especially some incidental and linking music and so on in Curse. I think that the Blood Island theme has a very nice melancholy quality to it.
Beautiful. And the way that it kind of stays consistent through the whole island but changes slightly. Creepy harpsichord and otherwise.
I think the roller coaster of death theme in the final sequence as well is one of my favourite pieces of music from those. I think it's my favourite piece of music from those later games.
It's got this kind of up and down motif on an accordion. It sounds really frantic. It's really nice.
Yeah, this frantic sort of rendition of LeChuck's theme mixed with, remixed to a certain extent. And there's the very chilling steel drum sequence that comes in when you're in the abominable snowman room.
I love that.
In the roller coaster as well, which has a very evocative quality to it. So yeah, I think the music in Escape is good as well. There's some I think Michael Land might be one of the only people who's worked on every Monkey Island game, possibly.
John Williams or Kenny Baker of Monkey Island.
Yeah, I'd have to confirm that, but I think some of the music in both Curse and Escape is really good and up there with the music from the first two games.
I will check that and insert a reference here.
It be the vicious demon pirate, Captain Fact LeCheck here. Michael Land is indeed credited as composing on each of the 6 Monkey Island games.
Thank you for that reference. I'm thinking as well, there's a cutscene early on in the game when LeChuck kills the 2 guys on the boat and takes over the boat, and he does this big swirl up the mast, and he kind of announces that he's back. Nice boots, huh?
Yeah.
And hey, look, I really am big boned. And it's just really nice music in that section as well. The soundtrack on of Curse is just great, and it's the first time those kind of classic pieces, the Voodoo Ladies theme, the Chuck's theme, the Monkey Island theme, are all rendered with real instruments, and I think that's done better than it was done in the special editions.
Yeah.
Nice boots, huh?
Sorry.
Hey, what do you know? I really am big bone.
Alright, that leads to number 4, and this is a pretty simple one. Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of universally accepted that Murray is kind of one of the best things from Curse.
Yeah.
Kind of easily the best character. The way he just pops up, kind of is introduced after that weird mini game with the cannon. You knock him into the water, or you don't have to, and then he appears in the Voodoo Lady's hut. There's a really funny exchange with him. He appears again later, and he helps you during the Blood Island sequence.
Yeah,
and then he just
inexplicably shows up on Blood Island and then on Monkey Island at the end.
Yeah, he appears again. He inexplicably also disappears.
Yeah.
From your inventory. I really like the joke. It still makes me laugh where he says, when I stroll through the gates of hell. Does it say stroll? Through the gates of hell with your head on a pike, and he says, the Guybrush says stroll. He says, all right, roll, when I roll through the gates of hell.
As I stride through the gates of hell, carrying your head on a pike. Stride? All right, then roll. Roll through the gates of hell. Must you take the fun out of everything?
I just thought that was funny. And then, does he have the last line in Curse? I believe he does.
It's either him or the thing about the dad and the kid at the theme park.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one.
That might be the very last bit, but that's Danny Delk as well, actually.
The demon pirate Captain Fact LeCheck back here with you to confirm that the final lines of dialogue are the exchange between the father and son at the end of LucasArts' graphic adventure game, The Curse of Monkey Island.
Doing that voice,
Doing the
I
dad,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah. He turns up again in Escape and Tails. But Curse wouldn't be as good without Murray, and I think it's just like one of the best things about the continuation monkey era.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you found her, you cadaverous canine?
Nope.
My next one, I think I've gotten up to my number 3 now because I think we've covered. There's been a bit of overlap here.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to say, and this is a bit of a niche one, but this is just a thing that stands out to me. It's the weird undead wedding gifts in LeChuck's hold.
Yeah, cool.
At the end of the first part of Curse of Monkey Island. So there's the chocolate coated barnacles. There's the teddy bear with an eye patch on and stuff. There's the what appears to be a bottle of champagne, but Guybrush says it's a bottle of sparkling formaldehyde.
Yeah. Nice, gross stuff. There's so much to explore in that game.
There's all this gross out stuff there that's just there for a joke, and there's also, and this is a very Monkey Island thing. There's also a washer dryer as well, and there's nothing creepy about it. It's just the joke is just that like it's a valuable piece of white goods.
Yeah, and a classic wedding present kind of joke.
Yeah. And it's a bit like the vacuum cleaner attachments that you can get inside the snake later on as well. It's a little bit of that curse doing the anachronisms for their own sake kind of thing, but I think because it's just a background detail, it works well. But I think I just find the bottle of sparkling formaldehyde is the funniest one in my opinion of all of those weird things in the whole, and it's just so disgusting, all the stuff down there. It just makes me laugh how how creepy it is. I really enjoy all that with the weird undead stuff in Curse of Monkey Island is done really well. Yeah, good call. I like there's a kind of very Monkey Islandish joke where the only thing that Guybrush will let you pick up is a bag of wooden nickels. Some treasure. Yeah. You know, there's all this great inventory that you could probably do stuff with, but for some reason that's the only thing that he'll let you pick up. And wooden nickels in themselves funny, because you can make them yourself.
Then there was the swab who came at me with the rusty fid. I sure taught him a thing or two about the proper use of deck chairs.
Alright, okay, my number 3, and this is much more broad than that your very specific one, was just Plunder Island in general. And I'm thinking specifically the ship with all the monkeys. I like the Cabana Beach. I like the ship on its side in the swamp. It's been repurposed as the Voodoo Lady's cabin. I like all the chickens that appear steadily as you keep coming back to the beach. I like the characters in the Barbary Coast. I like Kenny Foulmouth. It's really great. It's just a very, very great Monkey Island sequence. It's always really fun to play through, I think. It's very broad, but I just really like it. Yeah, I think that whole sequence is done really well. It's this kind of sleepy town. It's meant to be a place for retired pirates, but you don't really see any, which I think is one slight issue with it. But yeah, there are so many funny characters, and like Captain Blondebeard, his chicken shop is great. There's this whole subplot about
how the pirates have been overeating the chickens on the island, and how they believe that a demonic chicken is coming to get vengeance. Yeah, El Pollo Diablo. There's one of the things that's a bit discordant is the Shakespeare performance that's being rehearsed at the...
Oh, I was going to mention that as something that I really liked. Slappy Cromwell.
Slappy Cromwell. It's just a weird element because it's this very explicit reference to a real world thing, to Shakespeare, which is a bit unusual for the series. And I do find that funny that, you know, he has to make the material appealing to a pirate audience, but of course when the show is actually on, everyone in the audience are just monkeys anyway.
That's kind of cool and creepy in itself. It just feels like they would have had a lot of fun coming up with all those characters.
Yeah.
And they feel like characters like Slappy Cromwell, they probably came up with this kind of ridiculous Amdram kind of character and just thought, let's put him in, really funny.
Yeah.
And there's the character, it's the pirate with the beard in drag. There are no women.
I think the Cabana Boy is another great.
Yeah, having that kind of retirement home kind of idea.
Yeah, it's like Florida for pirates kind of thing. You know, you can go to the beach and stuff like that. And I think that the Cabana Boy, is so snide and
won't let you on the
repulsed
beach.
by you and everything. And you got the barbers are really funny. I think of the barbers, I think Van Helgen is probably my favourite.
Yeah,
of the three barber pirates.
I just think that puzzle with the dueling banjos, that's kind of a nice little thing.
Yeah.
It's a silly little memory game. It's not very hard, but it's nice. Yeah, Kenny Foulmouth swapping out the bottomless mug, and then he comes back in the next part selling guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots to explore. I think that's the thing. There's lots to explore. You can work on a different puzzle at the same time as you're trying to solve another puzzle. It's very kind of Monkey Island 1 and 2. It's great.
Yeah.
It's kind of that and Blood Island are kind of, they make up the bulk of Monkey Island 3.
Yeah. I think this leads into my number 2, which is, Mr. Fossey and the Pirates of Danger Cove, which was sort of, you mentioned there, which is, that's, again, part of the sort of particular breed of insanity that you get in Curse of Monkey Island, that you've got this oddly spoken man with the deranged look in his eyes who has a crew of monkeys, and the captain is just a gorilla in a pirate hat that he seems to think is talking to him.
It's great, that sequence. And then all the monkeys on the ship, and the guy eats too much fried chicken. Mr. Fossey eats too much fried chicken, and
and he seems to be ordering loads of chicken, and you have to impersonate the Captain LeChimp using the ventriloquism book to make Mr. Fossey think that. And there's this sort of William Shatner-esque voice that Guybrush does for Mr. Fossey. Sorry, for LeChimp.
Yeah, you're right.
To give him this voice where he says, and there's all these great jokes like he says, "We're all monkeys," and Mr. Fossey says, "Oh, do you mean in the Darwinian sense?" And no, in the literal sense. And I think the tarring and feathering, "Don't you feel humiliated?" Well, no more so than usual. You know, that kind of stuff I think is well, just get lost then. You know, that kind of stuff I think is really funny.
Great dialogue. It's actually funny though. There's some great dialogue in that game.
Yeah. I think, and you're told by the voodoo lady that the Pirates of Danger Cove are this menace in the local area. And when you go there, you find it's literally all just these monkeys, a gorilla, and this one crazy guy who seems to somehow be in control of the monkeys. It's not really clear, but all that stuff is very funny.
The sea monkeys supposed to have come back to Melee Island, crewed by monkeys.
Yeah.
In the first game, feels like there needed to be a pirate ship moored in the harbour, and they kind of put an interesting and funny spin on that. It's a more fun way to get a boat than like buy the boat, even though especially because that's already been done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Wow, what an amazing collection of junk.
Well, that brings me to my number 2, and this is very broad as well, and it's just Blood Island. Island and Skull Island. And I'm thinking the Good Soup family crypt, when you encounter the undead bride of Minnie Good Soup, and that's this amazing, creepy sequence. There's this whole story about LeChuck marrying, or about to marry Minnie Good Soup, because she wants to steal a diamond ring and she's heartbroken, just haunts the chapel, and you're trapped in the crypt and you don't know that anything's in there, especially the first time you play it and you walk down and she's just floating there at the altar. It's this great moment. Then you release a former suitor, Charles de Goulash. The characters in the hotel, Good Soup himself and Madame Zima, the creepy hotel and the music, the lighthouse. For some reason, I just really love the lighthouse. I think it's featured on the back of the box, and I remember looking at the box and thinking, that looks so cool. Going out to Skull Island and dealing with the pair of ruthless smugglers.
Yeah,
King Andre
and Cruff.
Mutual of Stan. I always thought it was so funny that Stan's still in the coffin, and then you release him.
I mean that was going to be my number one favorite thing from all of these games, is the way that they implemented Stan. I think the idea that you trapped Stan in this coffin in Monkey Island 2, and so when you find a coffin in the third game on a completely different island after who knows how much time has passed, you crowbar it open and Stan just springs out. And I think maybe, for people who'd played those games, who'd played the first 2 games, it was just such a hilarious moment. It
was a great moment. And they build up the suspense in the crypt where you think that it's going to be all scary and Guybrush can hear voices. It's like, it's my past coming back to haunt me. It's just Stan.
Yeah, and I think that just bit was really clever. They just took something from the second game and used it in a way that fit perfectly in
selling life insurance as well for that character. Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And just the absurdity of the fact that he's how did you survive in there, or how did you get business cards printed if you
I was going to mention that.
Now's not the time to worry about the details. I think that's the best of all the 3 appearances of Stan in the later games as well. That's by far the best version of him, because I think this is the one where at first he remembers you, which he doesn't in Escape, but I think the fact that he remembers you, but he does this whole slick businessman thing where he says he's grateful to you for giving him some perspective, which is this sort of corporate, bullshit thing, and then he kind of knows, I think, that towards the end that yet again you're ripping him off. And
that's
it's
great.
and that it repeats the joke that which is unfortunately kind of lost in the later ones, that in every game you rip Stan off in some capacity. Stan tries to rip you off and you rip him off, kind of thing. I just thought that, I remember as a kid just thinking that was so funny that Stan was in the coffin. It was just
I love that.
Perfect. Because it's like, how the hell would Stan be in this? Because we nailed him into we basically buried him alive in the last game, which is one of the, gone down in history as one of the funniest but cruelest puzzle solutions in a game where Guybrush has to do all these really horrible things to people.
To get ahead.
I just thought that bit was, genius.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then I love it's a generic thing, but it's the music in that scene. It starts off with this organ.
Yeah, it sounds like the Chopin funeral march. Yeah.
It's the new like version of Stan's theme. It's just great. And then you walk out and you come back and he's set up a neon sign that's flashing in this cemetery.
Again, that's very evocative of the original game.
One thing I didn't mention about Blood Island was the cannibals, the vegetarian cannibals.
Yeah.
You've just given lactose. You've just given cheese to a lactose intolerant volcano god, and you have to break into the ceremony where they sacrifice vegetables into the volcano, and you have to put cheese into the caldera in order to melt more cheese. It's just. I really like that sequence. It's probably my favourite sequence, hence being number 2 on my list. Post the Chuck's Revenge, I think that part of that game was the best.
Yeah,
easily.
I think that's the highlight of that game and of all the games that came since the original 2. Yeah, I think there are so many just funny aspects to that
great.
It doesn't matter that it's Lemonhead from Secret of Monkey Island. That's not very important. But I think the joke that they've fully embraced vegetarianism, but while merging that with their traditional beliefs,
human sacrifice.
That they've replaced that with fruit and vegetable sacrifice. That the volcano god's called Sherman. That feels like a very Weird Al Yankovic gag to me.
Definitely.
It's
or Peabody and Sherman, that kind of thing. It's very kind of 50s America kind of mad humor.
I think I was going to say, in terms of the kind of contextual humor, the fact that Lemon's got a lemon on his head, and I think there's a guy with like a pineapple head and a guy with a banana head up at the caldera as well, and that Guybrush's disguise as he carves a face into a huge block of tofu, which feels like a reference to that feels to me like a reference to sort of 90s like yuppie culture. Tofu would have been this thing that was probably relatively new in America. I'm thinking that would have been a bit of a like fad, probably food that people would have been eating thinking it had some kind of magical properties or something like that. I thought that was funny because this huge block of tofu just seemed like a reference to those kind of yuppie vegetarian diets that you would have gotten in that era when that was coming out.
That's kind of a classic way of kind of making fun of that kind of stuff while not being overt about it. Guybrush carving the stupid face, and then putting this big lump of tofu on his head, and whenever he takes it off, he makes that same
and there's that big comedy squish noise plays every time he puts it on his head or takes it off.
They managed to marry that comedy with think about walking through the not abandoned but quiet cannibal village, and hearing very atmospheric music. It's just chock full of atmosphere. And abandoned windmill. As I say, hearing the wind go past in the lighthouse. It's just so well done.
I was just going to say, you mentioned it briefly, but the Good Soup Hotel, Griswold Good Soup himself is such a well fleshed out character who, again, he's one of these people who you basically pull a scam on, essentially. The hotel is just so well realized as the image of one of those really naff holiday destinations which you would see in an old movie or something that would have been once upon a time was like a glamorous seaside location which has become all decrepit and run down and no one goes there anymore. And there's all that. I think Bill Tiller's artwork really adds to this. The huge
absolutely.
Sweeping curves on everything and the towering proportions of stuff. The disgusting wheel of cheese and over frozen fridge freezer in the back room. The gunked up nacho cheese machine. The room full of old portraits of the different rival families who've been competing for control of this hotel restaurant empire. And the fact that there's a locked up room with a dead man in a bed.
Yeah.
It's very very psycho kind of.
The scene
reminiscent
where
of
the
those
dead body
thrillers,
in the bed is just so creepy. It's so great.
Yeah.
There's so much to discuss there, and I think we'll probably do a kind of Curse retrospective where we'll go right deep into that at some point.
Yeah. I mean, that's covered my list because my number one was Stan on Blood Island. So what's your number one?
Hours later.
Okay, my number one was, and I don't know if this is a hot take or a controversial thing, but rhyming insult sword fighting on the high seas.
Okay, I was thinking about that as well.
I always found that as it seems like I shouldn't say it, but almost improving that puzzle from The Secret of Monkey Island.
Mm-hmm.
It's possibly making it a bit easier, but also making it fun at the same time. I read, because I've got little kids, I read a lot of children's books, and the ones I always enjoy reading to them the most are the ones that rhyme. It's all about the rhyming couplets, little kids' books. And something about the rhyming couplets and the fact that every thing that Guybrush makes up that isn't the correct answer. There's always the made-up answer.
Yeah.
It rhymes, but it's always so stupid.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like, that. I think that scene, that sequence, part 3 of The Curse of Monkey Island, is possibly not particularly well regarded. It's kind of a bit of a bump. You can't do anything else besides get through that. But I always thought, and that was just the first thing I thought of as being a big, like an improvement on the original concept of insult sword fighting. Much better than insult arm wrestling, which was stupid.
I think the thing about rhyming insult sword fighting is that it doesn't really make a difference through the majority of the encounters because there's still only one answer for each insult, and whether it rhymes or not doesn't make any difference.
No.
But it does add something to the fight with
Rottingham.
Yeah, the fight with Captain Rottingham at the end of the sequence, which obviously is again a copy of the fight with Carlo the Swordmaster from Secret of Monkey Island, but you have to choose not only an appropriate response, but an appropriate rhyming response as well. I don't know if that really makes the game any harder or that bit any more challenging or anything, but it adds
possibly makes it easier.
It adds a certain something to that sequence. I think I think the ship combat and the sword fighting sequence of Curse is definitely not my favourite bit of that game, and the rhyming is kind of it's like a fake change to the puzzle from Secret of Monkey Island, but I think it's still a funny sequence because the insults and the responses are still funny, and the pirates, the fact that if you lose, you just say, well, I don't have any treasure, so you can't take any off me. I think all the different...
I've never lost a fight when I've had treasure. I've never actually tried it. Isn't that weird?
I'm pretty sure if you do, I think I did it once intentionally, and I'm pretty sure if you do, Guybrush just refuses. He just lies and says he doesn't have any, I think, but I'm not sure. But I think there's a lot of funny bits in that with the going back to Kenny to get the upgraded cannons, and the fact that the cannons have all this increasingly ridiculous technology attached to them, all this apparatus, which is very reminiscent of... It's basically the same joke as the door to the cannibal's hut in Secret of Monkey Island that becomes more and more sophisticated the more times you break out of the hut until it's this huge electronic vault door, which, I seem to remember thinking was absolutely hilarious when I was a kid. And when you finally get to the Destructomatic T-47, isn't it? Is the highest grade of cannon, and it's got all the beeping computer parts and stuff on it. That's very funny. I think my favorite name of cannon is the Mr. Massacre brand cannon.
Mr. Massacre brand cannon. I think I might still use Destructomatic T47 in general conversation. Or at least T47 being the best thing ever, as opposed to 2000 or something like that. But yeah, I think that whole sequence is kind of all played for grins, and it doesn't really take too long. It's funny. It's all funny. I like it. I always prefer that to insult sword fighting in secret. I can't believe I've said that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's funny that you mention. Neither of us mentioned a pirate I was meant to be.
Yeah, I thought of that. Actually, I was going to make a joke that my number one was the giant monkey robot at the end of it. So I forgot to make that joke. So in conclusion, now that we've gone to the top 10, I found it interesting looking at these things, and especially looking at how many things you and I have picked from Escape from Monkey Island, which I feel like is, in essence, it's a good game, but just let down by some bits that stick out so much. They ruin the overall thing, because we picked a lot of things between us that were cool and atmospheric and memorable from that game. Yet I think you and I would agree that game just isn't as good as Curse. And I think it's let down by some.
Yeah, I think we'll have to go into Escape in a lot more detail, obviously, in a separate discussion. But I think it shows that Curse definitely, for all that it diverged from what was done in the first two games, which, I think it definitely did, it's still very strong in itself, very funny, and has these really great elements on its own. It has a lot more.
That was a point I was going to make, was that Return still has a lot to do to outdo Curse.
Yeah.
Nostalgia aside, that's still a great game.
I think Curse is probably in itself has one of the strongest, most consistent things through it is this gothic, grotesque creepiness and dark comic element, which it does really well in a way that's different to the darker aspects of Secret and Revenge. I think Escape has some funny ideas amid a lot of nostalgia pandering and awkward controls and very dated graphics that couldn't handle what they wanted it to do. And then when you get to Tales, I think it's just really bland, and there's not much to take from that stands out.
It kind of strips those things out of Escape, I think, for Tales, and just kind of... there were two directions it could go, and it picked the wrong one. I think that's a discussion we'll have about Tales of Monkey Island. Yes.
Maybe we'll have to also do a bottom 10.
I was thinking of doing a bottom 5, so it was slightly skewed in a more positive bent.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, well, thank you for listening to The Rubber Chicken with a podcast in the middle. The only podcast that asks the question, what's mightier, your sword or your wit? I've been Gordon.
I'm Alistair.
And...
Look behind you! A three-headed monkey!